If you're like me, then you absolutely love learning new facts and interesting secrets and details about Animal Crossing. And although on the surface Animal Crossing seems fairly simplistic, there are a lot of these really interesting facts and details to discover. So I've decided to make a compilation of past videos going over some of my favorite Animal Crossing facts. Even if you consider yourself an Animal Crossing expert, I definitely think you'll be surprised by some of these. So let's dive right into the facts. If you're excited, leave a like on the video and let's do this.
Number 1. Vesta the Clone Sheep. In Animal Crossing, depending on which language of the game you play, your villagers are likely to have different names. Oftentimes, these names are changed around the world to make more sense in the language and region you're playing in. One really cool one is Vesta, who in Germany is called Dolly, which a viewer pointed out to me. This is a reference to the clone sheep, who was the first mammal cloned from a somatic cell. This is a pretty cool homage to one of the most influential and important animals in history. Dolly even has clones of herself out there in the world today, so she lives on in more than just Vesta and Animal Crossing. Number 2. The First Villager. Let's talk about our beloved cat and channel mascot, Bob. Did you know that Bob was potentially the first villager ever created? His ID number is number 1 in the original Animal Crossing game, meaning he's listed first amongst all of the villagers. His birthday is also January 1st, leading a lot of people to believe that he was the first one ever made. We're yet to get confirmation on this, but it seems to add up, and I think his fairly simple design would have worked well as a good reference point for other characters. I'd certainly like to believe that our boy Bob was the first amongst many great villagers that we know and love today. Number 3. The Alpacas. Another viewer let me know that in Spanish, Cyrus and Reese are actually called Owl and Paca respectively, which is a really simple fact but a super cute one. Of course, the pair are both based on alpacas, and the only characters in the games to be so. They're definitely a cute couple, and they also made their short-lived return in Animal Crossing New Horizons recently for the wedding season. Maybe we'll get to see them again soon, hopefully so. Number 4. Apollo the Astronaut. In pretty much every language, Apollo's name is a form of his English name. That means most people should be very familiar with this guy by now and be able to easily identify him regardless of which language he's referred to in. He really takes the cake when it comes to name consistency, and he's a pretty iconic character, having been in all of the Animal Crossing games and even in the Animal Crossing movie as well. As a bald eagle, his birthday is the 4th of July, which marks the United States Independence Day. He's also most likely named after the American Apollo space program too, which makes him a pretty high-flying bird. Number 5. Patty the Party Cow. A few viewers pointed out to me that in Spain, Patty the cow's name is Vacarina. Vac, which means cow, and then the word Macarena, which is a pretty famous Spanish dance song and dance routine. We had no idea that Patty liked to party so hard, but you know, the more you know. Number 6. Coco the Gyroid. Coco has become a pretty popular character who's definitely one of the most beloved rabbit villagers in the games, but for a lot of people she's also one of the creepiest. This is because Coco is actually based upon a gyroid, the little clay statues which you can dig up after a rainy day in most Animal Crossing games. It's also what the character Lloyd is directly based off. This makes Coco less of a rabbit and more of a hollow statue who is modelled after a Haniwa statue, which were made for ritual use and buried with the deceased in the past. I still love her though, and I'm definitely a big fan of the characters who are more unique like she is. I just think they're a lot more fun and interesting. Number 7. The King of Halloween. Just a small fact here, also sent to me by a viewer, but in Japan, Jack, who is the Halloween NPC, is also called Pump King, which is very fitting for the King of Halloween, and it's also a nice little pun too, which we love. I think given his fun spirit and love of mischief, Jack would definitely enjoy having this name. It's certainly incredibly fitting for him. Number 8. Duck Food. On the more unfortunate side, Pate the duck is actually named after a duck food dish, which makes her one of the more darkly named characters. Trust me though, she isn't the only character on this list whose name has a darker meaning behind it. I definitely think the writers of the games have a pretty dark and cynical sense of humor, and I enjoy that a lot, as the older Animal Crossing games The writing was a lot like this and it was honestly fantastic. I will say, however, though, I love ducks, so I feel very sorry for Pate. Number 9. Kabuki's name consistency. Now, we talked about Apollo having the same or a very similar name variant in every language, but for Kabuki, his name is the same in literally every language that the game has, which I think is incredibly cool. I mean, what else could they name the guy anyway? He's a Kabuki, which is part of Japanese theatre if you didn't know, so he's a super cool character. Number 10. Bao and Meow. You guys might know of the two removed villagers Bao and Meow. A fun fact about them that is sad for the rest of the world is that they were never seen outside of the Japanese version of the original Animal Crossing game. This is most likely because they were based on the Bao and Meow lingual translation devices, which claim to translate what a dog or cat would say to you. Whether this is true is debatable, but probably not, let's be honest. Their face designs are literally the spitting image of the product, and this product was only made available in Japan, so that makes these characters pretty confusing for anyone outside of that area. They probably wouldn't get the reference of what these characters are designed for. That being said, I think they're both super cool and I'd love to see them return one day alongside a bunch of different villages that they removed. I mean, there really is a whole ton of characters that used to be in the game that they took out, and I'd love to see some of them come back one day. Number 11. The robots. We may actually have a few different characters out there who are robots, such as Ribbot and Sprocket. It's unknown where these characters came from, but Ribbot mysteriously has the number 59 on the back of his head, implying he's one of many mass-produced robot frogs, or robot animals out there in the world. Sprocket has the number 04 on the back of his head also, meaning there's most likely a line of characters like this out there somewhere in the Animal Crossing world. It's definitely interesting, and maybe there's some kind of big Animal Crossing robot conspiracy out there, I don't know, but hopefully we see even more Animal Crossing robot characters introduced in the future, and we can see what numbers they have on the back of their heads as well. Number 12. The Cranky O'Hare. Since two new personalities were introduced in Animal Crossing New Leaf, those being Smug and Sisterly, also known as Uchi, some villagers had to have their personalities adapted to fit. For example, in the older games, O'Hare used to be a cranky villager. This definitely feels super out of place for him now, given how well he fits into the Smug category, so I'm very happy that they added those two new personality types in. It works really well for some of the older villagers who got changed, and also really well for some new characters that we saw introduced in Animal Crossing New Leaf, and also Animal Crossing New Horizons. Hopefully we get to see even more personality types added in the future. Number 13. Unfortunate Elmer. Back to the dark facts, Elmer the horse is most likely named after Elmer's glue, which actually used to be made from horses. This is another great example of the writers sneaking in a dark little reference for us all to enjoy. Poor Elmer though, I definitely hope he doesn't end up becoming glue, that would be a big shame. Number 14. Gracie. In Japan and South Korea, Gracie is and has always been a male character, but for the international audience, they're female. This also applies to the character Sahara. I'm not quite sure why there's this discrepancy, but ultimately Gracie is one of the most fun and iconic characters in the games. Let's be honest, who else would judge our poor fashion choices other than Gracie? Number 15. Mythological Villagers. We have at least 3 villagers that are based upon mythological creatures, making them exceptionally cool. These 3 are Julian, who is based upon a unicorn, Phoebe, who is based upon a phoenix, and Drago, who of course is based upon a dragon. These 3 are super cool characters and definitely 3 you'd want living with you in your town or in your island. I really love characters like this. As I mentioned earlier, Coco is one of those characters that has such a unique design, but then when you've got villagers who are literally based upon mythological creatures, how can you not love them and want them living with you?
Villagers specifically seem to have so many interesting facts about them, so here's a video I made back in 2020 with some of my favorite. Also, huge thanks to my friend and fellow creator Cresselia who helped me out on this original video way back in 2020.
Fact number 1. Audie. Believe it or not, Audie might actually be named after a very iconic fan of the series. In recent years, a grandma and her grandson came forward to share that she had played Animal Crossing New Leaf for thousands of hours, which is an impressive feat in itself, but given her age, it seemed quite unexpected. Of course, this grandma's name is Audie, and she's pretty much adored by the entire Animal Crossing community. It seems very likely that someone from Nintendo saw this as it did go viral, and decided to localize the name of this new wolf to match the grandma. We obviously can't say for certain unless Nintendo directly confirms it, but I think it's pretty safe to assume this is the case, and it's certainly really nice to think about too. If anyone deserves to have an Animal Crossing character named after them, it's definitely Audie, and it's really cute to see. Number 2, Chops. Although I hate to bring him up in this video as he's my least favourite character in the entire game, Chops has a hidden detail about him that many don't know. You might think by his design that he's an 18th century aristocrat just waiting to burn down an orphanage, but he's actually based on a nutcracker. This is very fitting as his mere presence does drive me nuts. Though this fact doesn't make me like him anymore, it's still kind of cool, and nutcrackers have always been an iconic part of Christmas for me, so it does make his design a bit more appealing. He also kind of looks like a World War I soldier, but I think the nutcracker is the most obvious thing that relates to Chops. So whether this makes you like him more or not, for me, I'm still kind of stuck in the anti-Chops zone. Number 3, Cube. Although it's hard to tell in New Horizons, Cube was in a way a game mascot for the Nintendo GameCube. Animal Crossing made its American and European debut on the GameCube, which means this version included some snazzy GameCube themed items. This included the GameCube shirt, something that Cube wore in the original game. Sadly, his shirt changed as the years went by, so this reference is somewhat lost to time. Still, it's kinda cool to think about how he was developed and changed throughout the years, and how he basically used to be a mascot for the GameCube game. Number 4, Dell. Though he may appear like a regular alligator at a glance, Dell isn't an animal at all, he's actually mechanical. In previous games, it was generally assumed that he was made of plastic, but with the graphical improvements of New Horizons, it's made it clearer that him being mechanical was the intention all along. Dell is somewhat themed after a battleship, with little windows at the side of his face. He's one of the few characters in the series that isn't a real animal, which makes him much more interesting amongst the rest. It's really cool to see these characters who aren't actually animals in a game literally all about animals, so he's a little bit suspicious like that, but I like it. Now, for our next 2 entries, we'll be joined by an incredible Animal Crossing YouTuber and a friend of mine, Cresselia. Take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Cresselia. I'm really happy Crossing Channel and I have finally decided to do something together. My channel will be in the description below if you'd like to see any of the things that I get up to in New Horizons. Number 5. Dell isn't the only villager with buoyancy built in though. Hopkins the rabbit has his own secret way of floating because he's actually not a rabbit at all. He's an inflatable. On the back of his head you can find a closed air hole very much like the ones you'd see on pool floaties and party decorations. Also, his pocket camp quote states that he's full of hot air and that if he wasn't properly moored to the ground, a light breeze could blow him away. Does this imply he has weights in his feet as well? Number 6. Other animals that are in the not really an animal category are Ribbit and Sprocket, who you probably have guessed are actually robots. The particularly interesting thing about these guys is that they have numbers printed on the backs of their heads. Ribbit has a 59 and Sprocket has 04. Because they're robots, this isn't that unusual as it could be a reference to them being mass produced, meaning that there are more Ribbits and Sprockets out there. Or maybe it's that it took 59 attempts to make Ribbit perfect and only 4 for Sprocket. You decide.
Number 7, Octavian. In Japanese pop culture, octopuses are commonly used to represent aliens. This would explain why his house is space themed and even why he wears a star shirt. This wouldn't be the only Nintendo game with such a reference. For example, Mario Odyssey recently had scary octopuses on the moon. Octavian is definitely one of the cooler characters in the series, especially since he's one of the only 4 octopus villagers in the entire games, one of which has actually been removed from the games, which would be Inkwell. Number 8, Jacob. I did some research and it seems like Jacob the bird is the only villager in the entire game who has a different name in the PAL versions of the games. In my version here in the United Kingdom, he's called Jakey, and his name is printed like this on his amiibo card too. It's a very strange discrepancy, and I'm honestly not sure why they did this, but it was an interesting little detail that I wanted to point out in this video. I guess Jakey is like his cool nickname or something, I don't know, but this is a change that they've made in my region, so hopefully for you players in other parts of the world, you might not have known this one. Number 9. Victoria. Victoria is the only horse villager in the game who is a racehorse, her name likely originating from the Victoria Derby or the famous racehorse named Victoria Park. In Animal Crossing E+, the game she was introduced in, she even wore a racer shirt to symbolize this. Her designs remained the same since Wild World, however, and I've gotta say I prefer her current consistent yellow look. It works well for the character and she definitely has a good design. Maybe she's put her racing days behind her, only Victoria knows the answer. Now, let's go over 2 fun bonus facts. Bonus fact, Caesar has the strangest and best portrait in the game, and I honestly don't know how I've never seen this before. It's just so bizarre, but it's also so perfect at the same time. Another bonus fact is that Stinky is the only character who doesn't wear a t-shirt in his portrait photo. This is really weird, but I guess it has something to do with the fact that he's a wrestler. I mean, it makes sense, but I wanted to point it out either way. Number 10. Sid. Sid the Elephant is a new character and basically as punk as you can get in the world of Animal Crossing. So much so that his Japanese name is literally Punks. The fun fact about his English name is that it's likely a reference to Sid Vicious, a leading member of the late 70s punk movement. Like all of the new characters introduced in New Horizons, he's the only one of his species with his personality type, meaning he's the only cranky elephant in the game. This is fairly fitting for his punk attitude, and he's definitely a cool new character that I personally feel is quite underrated. I'd love for you guys to tell me in the comment section down below how you feel about Sid, and whether you like this character and his whole punk aesthetic or not.
Those first 2 videos focused a lot on facts about villages, so how about some facts about hidden locations in New Horizons? The first 3 special spots that we can find can only be found in the Happy Home Paradise archipelago for the DLC. The first one happens to be in the far left corner of the map. It's a little stone stool that you can sit on, and it'll give you a really nice view of the ocean. Pretty much all of these special spots will give you a special perspective and view that you can't usually get in the game, which makes them super unique and interesting, especially since there's so few of them in the entire game. The next one highlights this feature even better. If you head to the right side of the cliff, you'll find another stone stool. If you sit on this one, you'll get a really cool view of the entire beach and the villages that you can find on there. This one is particularly nice because you can also sit here during the special DJ KK event, meaning you get a really nice view of the entire thing happening. This one is definitely my favorite special spot in the game. I just love it so much. It gives a really nice view, and again, you simply cannot get this sort of perspective any other way. As I was mentioning, there are 3 different spots that you can find on the Happy Home Paradise archipelago. Another one is actually on the little piece of driftwood that you can sit on. Sometimes you'll get special cutscenes here with Wardell, which are honestly really great, but you can sit here anytime you like and get a nice different view of the beach, which I really like. Don't worry though, there are plenty of these special spots back on your own island. Another one that was introduced since the 2.0 update happens to be a very special one that you can only really see when you're playing with friends. This of course involves you grabbing a coffee with your friends in the roost, which is such a lovely feature, and when you do, you get a very special scene and a view of the roost that you can only see by doing it. Of course, you can't just sit in this one freely like you could with the other ones and get a nice view, so I suppose this one is a little bit different, but I thought it was worth a mention because it's fairly similar to the concept of all of the other ones on this list. Not to mention the fact that it's just a really great feature, and I love this, so definitely make sure you do it at some point, you won't regret it. There are also a whole bunch of these different special spots in the museum as well. These have been in the game since the very start, and honestly all of them are really fantastic, and you may not have even spotted them all. A really good way of spotting a special spot in Animal Crossing New Horizons, especially in the museum, is to see if there's like maybe a little patch of ground that looks different, there's some kind of circle on the floor, or some kind of interesting seat that you could sit on. The museum is honestly full of these, and in all of the different exhibits, you'll be able to find some kind of special spot where you can get a really unique view of the place. One of my absolute favorites is in the fossil exhibit where you can see the meteorite in the sky, which of course is a very on the nose reference to the fact that the dinosaurs were knocked out by a meteor. Now for the next part of the video, I want to dive into some more secret facts that I really enjoyed learning about. You'll have to let me know in the comment section down below how many of these you knew. Now to start us off, we have a fun little callback to a past Animal Crossing game that you might not have realized unless you played it yourself. You'll definitely recognize these gold glowing spots around your island, and these are actually a callback to the very first Animal Crossing game, back on the GameCube or the N64 where it first appeared. Those golden spots appeared in that game every day too, although they had a different functionality, as back then you could actually plant shovels into them and that's how you'd get the golden shovel. A few days later it would grow a golden tree, you'd shake it and the golden shovel would appear. I personally think this is much cooler than how they did it in Animal Crossing New Horizons, so it's a bit of a shame how it ended up, but I still love that this made its way back to a later Animal Crossing game, and hopefully the gold trees will in the future too. Now how about a secret about an item? Here we have the bamboo grass item which you can get for a limited time from Nook Shopping, and if you interact with this item, you'll be able to read lots of different notes. Seemingly these notes are from the villagers and some of the special characters around your island, at least that's how I interpreted it, and this is a really cool Japanese tradition that they've ported into the game. I love reading all the different notes and seeing people's hopes and wishes for the year ahead. And it's really cool, especially when people kind of think that New Horizons doesn't have any interesting dialogue. This is a good way of getting some that you might have never seen before. So many of the items in the game are interactable, but this has to be one of the coolest honestly, and I feel like it's something that a lot of people overlook. The item is just really pretty and great to look at, but it's super cool to know that it does have a functional purpose as well. This villager is Hopkins. You might have met him on your island before or seen him somewhere else, and he has an interesting little secret and connection with another character in the game who also is a rabbit and happens to be very infamous. The character he has a connection with is Zippity Bunny. Now both of these characters share a birthday, which is definitely interesting, but there is another coincidence, or maybe an intentional one, that does connect these two characters together. It is the fact that Zipper has an interesting little zipper on his back, as we all know, indicating that he is most likely in a costume, and then Hopkins also has a secret on his back, the back of his head, which is a little inflatable thing, suggesting that he is just an inflatable rabbit rather than a real one. So both of these characters are connected in these two separate ways, which I definitely don't think is a coincidence. I feel like Nintendo has to have put some thought into this. I really love villagers and characters that aren't necessarily what they say they are. You know, we have interesting ones like Coco and such, but Hopkins is just such a strange case to me. I feel like he's one that people don't talk about as much, but is still just as peculiar. And Zippity Bunny, of course, we've all talked about him so much. He is infamous in Animal Crossing New Horizons, and it's just interesting to know that he has a connection with another character that is also a bit of a suspicious rabbit. I feel like if we're gonna get on Zippity Bunny's back for being fake, then we should probably do the same thing with Hopkins too, it's only fair. Speaking of villagers, this is one of my favorites, Shino, who was added within the 2.0 update later on into the lifespan of New Horizons. An interesting fact about her is she is the only villager whose birthday is on the 31st of October, meaning her birthday of course is on Halloween. She does also share this with Jack of course and Laybell as well, which is interesting. But what I find kind of sad about her birthday is the fact that you'll never be able to see her celebrate Halloween with you if she lives on your island, due to the fact that she will always be indoors celebrating her own birthday. It's such a shame as well, since she really fits the theme of Halloween. That's just kind of how she's designed after Japanese folklore and such. So it makes sense that she does celebrate her birthday on this day, but it is sad at the same time that she can't take part in one of the best events in the game in my opinion. Now this next one isn't super secret or anything, it's just a fun little detail that I really love. If you see a special shopkeeper appear on your island, what is really interesting is they will actually disappear on Harv's Island if they have a shop over there too. This is a great little piece of connectivity which just makes the game feel a little bit more realistic. Leaf will even take away his little shopping cart, which is usually hidden behind his trailer, so it's a really cool little detail. I feel like some games out there would have just made it so the character could appear in both places, you know, just sort of inexplicably, but New Horizons remembered that once these characters are actually on your island, they will be gone from Harv, so you can't visit them in both places on the same day, and I like that. Speaking of special characters, a really fun little detail is that if you do group stretching on the day a special character is visiting you, They will always take part in the group stretching session. So for example, Leaf is here today as you saw, and he will take part in the group stretching, so it's a great way of knowing who is on your island. This works really well for seeing if characters like Celeste are visiting your island currently, so it's a great way of sussing them out without searching your whole island. It could also work for other characters who don't really announce that they're arriving, so yeah, I definitely think it's a great idea to do this if you're looking for certain characters on your island. Speaking of group stretching, something that I think a lot of people don't realize is you can get a special reward for group stretching 50 times. This is a set of exercising related reactions. You might notice that there are still some empty slots right at the very end of your reactions page, and it's most likely that these are the 7 reactions that you still need from doing group stretching. Believe it or not, even I haven't unlocked these yet somehow. I think because personally I never really enjoyed the group stretching feature that much, but you can do it without even using any of the exercises and still get these rewards, I believe, so it's worth just trying to do it that 50 times, and it's definitely something I'm going to work hard towards because I just want to finally unlock everything in this game after playing it for so long at this point. And hey, you can tie it in with the secret that I had before about seeing the special characters, so maybe this feature is a little bit more useful than I first thought. Now let's move back to villagers. Did you know there are several robot villagers in the game who all have an interesting secret? We have Cephalobot, who was most recently added within the 2.0 update. We have Ribot. We also have Sprocket. And then we have Dell, who is kind of an interesting case because they're not technically a robot, they're themed after a battleship, but they still kind of fit within this category, honestly. We also have a character known as Nindori, but they haven't appeared since the original Animal Crossing game in Japan, I believe, so I don't think we'll ever be seeing them again, honestly, especially as they were a tie-in with a Japanese magazine at that point. Now, the connecting secret with these 3 main robots is the fact that they all have numbers on the back of their heads. We have Sprocket with 04 on the back of his head, we have Ribot with 59, and then we have Cephalobot with 083. Now, these are all slightly different in their own way. For example, Sprocket's is in red, and of course Sprocket is green also, so he kind of stands out compared to the others. It is interesting to maybe think maybe he's an earlier version or something like that, maybe not using the best materials yet, I don't know, or just a special edition. Then we have Ribot, who has 59, you know, fairly standard, and of course the new Cephalobot, who continued this tradition, so Nintendo is clearly still thinking about this, who has 083. I wonder why they decided to add the 0 in there when Ribot doesn't have that. Maybe it's just because of the size of Cephalobot's head? I'm not really sure, but I definitely find it interesting. And now we have another secret about the robot villagers as well. Here you can see that their eyes will actually glow in the dark. It's not a really strong glow, but it does kind of glow faintly, which I find interesting. It does add to their robotic nature, so this is just a really cool little detail that I'm glad the developers added into the game. It just makes these characters feel that much more special and definitely ones to want on your island. But they aren't the only villagers with a glowing eye, as we also have Lucky, whose eye will glow in the dark too, as you can see here. This is just a really cool detail that adds to Lucky's kind of creepy nature. Although personally I've never found Lucky to be creepy at all, I think he's absolutely adorable. But of course he is a mummy, so it kind of adds into that lore and mystery behind the character. I really love when they do details like this, and there's so many villagers out there with secret details that I might have to make a full video just going over that too. I hope you enjoyed checking those out as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video to show your support, comment Bob's Gang down below if you made it to the end, and subscribe and turn on notifications for more Animal Crossing content.